Well, good morning, everybody. Welcome back to Sandy Bottom Homestead. I hope you're having an absolutely fantastic day. And yes, spring is upon us. It is here. And now it is time to execute at least 2 of the 3 R's that I have for my garden. And this is an uphill battle. I've gotten a lot of comments about people saying like, hey, all my broccoli bolted, but oh well, I'll just move on. And I respect that sentiment, and that is a good way to look at it, is like, oh well, what can you do? But there's actually a lot we can do, and we can take advantage of this and move forward. So this is the battle, the spring battle that we're gonna go through, and I do it every year, and you and I are gonna do it together because you are my favorite viewer. And real quick, before I move on, and I'll show you some of the issues I have and what I'm talking about, but I do have to make 2 announcements. One, I did that purple GMO video, tomato video, whatever, and I'm telling you, I had a lot of problems with comments in that video, like getting through, being able to reply and stuff like that. And there was a particular comment that would not go away, meaning I couldn't get out of my inbox, I couldn't get it to post correctly. And I want to bring that to light, even though I don't necessarily agree with it. I don't want to censor anybody. And you can look into it for yourself, but somebody was saying the use of CRISPR. It's C-R-I-S-P, either E-R or just P-R, one of the two, added into plants. So you guys can look that up. I didn't want anybody to think I was censoring them. There was a lot of issues with that video, just saying. So you can check that out. And the other thing too is I did a video a long time ago, like a couple years ago, and I made one comment, said I'm having a bad beard day, and I get so many comments about that 1 millisecond. Well, guess what? I'm having a good beard day. So the first thing we're gonna do is we're gonna do our first R. We're gonna recognize, and we're gonna recognize that there's an issue. And so I've actually never had this before, and I'm actually excited about it, believe it or not, but my kale is bolting. So I'm recognizing that it's bolting, and I know there's a couple reasons why that could be, and you've got to understand why it does that. This video is, I mean, a lot of people have problems with broccoli, and as I do in the spring, and actually just all the time, kind of sucks to grow, but it's so good. What can I say? And I didn't think that when I was a kid. You know, let us know if you like broccoli when you were a kid and now love it. It's weird. Anyways, plants bolt for multiple reasons. One is it's just too hot for them. It's time, they're going to go to seed. It's part of them fulfilling their life cycle. Their life cycle, the plant is not made for us to eat, it is made to produce. So it feels that it's getting too hot, and it's like, look, I got to produce, and it's going to make it seed, and it's going to die off. The other thing is stress. So it could be overly stressed, meaning lack of water, lack of nutrients, something like that. It's about to die. And that's why you'll have like a really small plant go to bolt. And you're like, well, how's that happen? Well, it's because it can tell, because, I mean, believe it or not, plants, I think, are pretty smart. It's like, hey, I'm going to die. I need to reproduce so my genes can live on. So we need to recognize that. So this kale in particular, it's bolting because it was planted too early in the season, we had a weird winter where it was really warm, and then we got a really cold days, and then we just had 85 degrees the other day, and it was 38 last night. So it's cold again, whatever, but it's stressed. The plant's healthy, but it's fulfilling its life cycle. So we recognize that issue. Now we need to rectify it, and there's multiple ways to do that. Basically, if you're here to see if you can save a bolting plant, I'm going to go ahead and tell you, no, you can't reverse it. So you can just, if you don't want to stay here, there's your answer. See ya. Wouldn't want to be ya. But for the future, there are things that we can do. Brings us to our next test subject, our broccoli. Our broccoli this year is doing fabulous. I mean, the good Lord has blessed us this year so far with happy broccoli plants, but also the knowledge to make those broccoli plants happy. And this has been my goal for years, to get to this stage at this time of year. We're looking at it, and I know you see a couple really tall plants. Those are not bolting. Those are actually the Calabrese sprouting broccoli, which are just generally bigger plants. So we've only got a handful of them, which you can clearly see. And all of the rest of them are Green Magic broccoli, and they all are getting heads significantly larger day by day. we're coming through and we're getting them. It's just, this is amazing. This is exactly where I wanted to be at this exact time of year. I'm gonna take my years of trial and error and try and eliminate a couple years of it for you. So there's a couple things we did. We did the same thing where we recognized we had an issue. It was bolting every year. It was almost a joke of planting broccoli in the spring. It was like, well, I'll just give it a shot. Who knows what's gonna happen? It's gonna bolt. And then this year I started thinking about it and I was like, man, that's bull crap. There's no way. Like, I'm not gonna just say that it's just the way it is. It's not just the way it is. It's the way I made it. And so what we did is we did a couple things. One, we planted this broccoli a month earlier than normal. And if you remember, I've been talking a lot this year, and it's my personal crusade to help people, saying you can plant earlier, you can harvest sooner, and you can harvest more. And that's what we're gonna do. So we planted a month earlier. Now each year I've stepped it up a little bit more, and this year I went from, last year I stepped it up to about 3 weeks earlier, and this year I went about another month on top of that earlier, and you can see where we stand. So this is a great part of it. Now, that's not the only thing we're doing, and you gotta make sure you remember this part. So, looking at this bed of broccoli right now, where we stand, we've got maybe a month until this whole thing will look like a wildflower bed. It'll be covered with bees, it'll be covered with pollinators, there'll be flowers everywhere, there won't be a damn thing to eat. And then I'll be coming on here with my tail in between my legs saying, I messed up, I planted too late. And then the next thing that's gonna come out of my mouth is, oh well, what can you do? Well, I could do nothing then, but now I've recognized it, so I'm rectifying it. And the other thing I've done is I've been fertilizing a lot more. And I know there's a lot of you that don't fertilize, and this is the exact moment when you're gonna say, click, thumbs down, I don't fertilize, I don't need to, my soil's perfect, good for you. But I'm telling you, it's made a difference this year, and I'm gonna tell you how I've done this and how I've made that difference. So in case you haven't been following the channel and you don't know how I start these, I start every single bed with a balanced fertilizer in the planting hole with, and this time of year, extra blood meal. So right off the bat, that's what I start. I put the plant in the ground and I put it in there. It's organic, so it takes 2 to 3 weeks for it to break down. So that's what I do. And you can see, if we come down here, everything's planted in a nice and neat, for the most part, row. And underneath that, after I hoe it, I put it in the trench. Then I come back, and you have to remember, at this point, I put this in the ground January 15th, okay? Now, I'm in coastal North Carolina, so that's where I sit. You may be somewhere different and can't plant them, but you can just take this, wherever you planted and you're getting bolting, you need to move forward, okay? So knowing that I used organic fertilizer, and I put it in the ground, and I know that it takes 2 to 3 weeks, when it's warm, which it wasn't, for it to start to activate, then I knew that if I came back in a month, I would put in some more blood meal. And so I add more nitrogen to my bed, and I scratch it into the ground nice and neat, get it in there, and then that's gonna re-up it. So now it's starting to warm up, because remember, we're talking about spring now. We are not talking about fall. We are 100% talking about spring only. And when I say spring, I mean planting in the winter to harvest in the spring season. That's just how it works. So we know that eventually it's going to be warming up more and more, so we add that. Now, once I do that, here's the trick. I start using liquid, like a fish fertilizer or something like that. Again, organic, but because it's liquid, it feeds immediately. And so I'm actually due for another feeding right now, and about every 2 weeks through my drip system, I am injecting liquid fertilizer. Now, that's important to know. If you don't have a drip system, which I understand if you don't, you can simply hand water it in, and which I think is almost a little bit better because you can spot water certain plants like you want. But we've been doing that every 2 weeks, and I will tell you, since we have done that, we have had uniform growth on this broccoli. So it'll start to come up, we'll feed it, the head will formed, we feed it again, Within a day or two, you're seeing another push. And within a day or two of that, you're seeing another push. And so every 2 weeks, we're coming in here and we are feeding like that. And that is what is pushing this growth. And I mean, look, the proof is in the pudding. It is right here. I know some of you might say, well, hey, I use compost, and that's fine. I put compost in too, and that does help. I do a lot of things that do help. But this specifically is what is pushing this growth to this rate. I've been putting those little quizzes up about the biggest, you know, onion. I'm trying to do like per season. So as we get warmer, I'll move into like summer vegetables. But how do you think somebody got, what was an 18-pound onion? They fertilized, and they fertilized a lot. And that's really important because yes, this bed is got nutrients in it. My soil is not totally depleted. This bed was, I believe, it was able to rest most of the winter. We put chicken manure in it as well. We put our compost in it, but you gotta add those nutrients back some way. And now the difference between the synthetic and the organic fertilizer is the organic is also feeding the soil. So at the same time, we're building this soil up. Enough of the broccoli. Let's come over here and we'll look, you know, let's look at these Brussels sprouts, all right? 4 years I've been trying to grow Brussels sprouts. This year has been my year. I have figured it out. Other than the fact that they're totally covered in pine tree sperm or pollen, they're looking amazing. They're growing great, and it's down to the feeding aspect because not too long ago, these sprouts were about the size of those at the bottom. So we turned on the feeding and we fed and we fed. And each time we do it, we can literally see the sprouts grow bigger. Same with this. You know, this cabbage bed, we're harvesting 1 cabbage a week. I think this week we may actually take 2. And we're just feeding and feeding and feeding and pushing. And you can see the heads are growing. And there's more to the story than just feeding. The sun's getting higher, it's getting warmer, it's getting more pleasant, the plants are liking to grow, and this is just icing on the cake. This is what's gonna push it to the next level. So we'll see over the future, the near future, with our onions, hopefully, we're gonna be feeding them heavy, and we'll see the same thing with our onions. Hopefully, I believe we may only have like maybe 2 feedings left on our onions before we stop, but they take a lot of food. And the more you feed them, the bigger the greens get, the bigger the harvest is. More greens equals more fruits, just like more roots equal more fruits. Even though an onion is not a fruit, but you get what I'm saying. So as we go through all of this, you can kind of see what we're talking about here. It is an absolute race to get these cabbages to head up. And you can look at them and say, like, I don't know, it's gonna be close. And it is gonna be close. I mean, we've got maybe roughly a month before we need to start putting in sweet potatoes. Now there's a couple ways we can work around that to some extent. My plan as of right now is I actually do want to let these kale go to seed and try and save some seeds since I'm already like starting to get there. So I'll let those go until the absolute last minute, and then I'll pull them if I have to. And then we're just gonna keep pumping this bed full of fish fertilizer and push it, because it is an absolute race. I did a short recently, and I said, in the short, I highlighted a part of my video where I was talking about, like, you could get more out of your garden earlier than your neighbors. And somebody said, well, I don't worry about the neighbors, I worry about the heat. Well, look, nobody cares about what your neighbors are growing. Again, I've said it before, I could care less what other people are doing in their gardens. All I'm doing is I'm here to help you. But what that really meant is, and in the garden, in the South, you're beating the heat. It's a race to beat the heat in the spring and in the summer, you know, with the tomatoes and stuff like that. Now, if you live up north, it's the opposite. You're racing to beat the cold, or you're either waiting out the cold, one of the two. So, you know, you've got to apply this to where it is, and you're going to have to put on your little thinking cap and figure it out for yourself, because gardening is like a puzzle. You've got to put the pieces together. And sometimes that last piece of the puzzle is up under the bed and you can't find it. But you just keep looking for it and looking for it until you figure out where it is, you plop it in, and then next thing you know, as of right now, we're looking to get, I'd almost estimate in this bed, I think we have 24 broccoli planted. I'm pretty sure we're gonna get 21 broccolis out of it. I'm gonna leave a little bit of margin of error, but I was just telling my wife last night, it looks like we might have 24 heads of broccoli come out of here. And that's part of this. So there's recipe in the success. So you've recognized there's a problem, right? Now you have to respond to it, remember it. So it's recognized. I like to remember it so I can apply it for next year. And then the third aspect would be for spring, for these crops, is rectifying it. And then we put it all together. And so it does take time. You can't just say, oh, well, it bolted, let me plant another broccoli. It doesn't really work that way. But don't let this story that you tell yourself of, what can I do? You can do a lot and you can do better. And I have faith in you, because if I can figure it out, you can figure it out. You just got to test it out and you got to care enough to do it.